Inside Wisconsin is brought to you by Baycare Clinic, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, Rolltech, Festival Foods, Capital Credit Union, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, American Family Insurance, Miller Lite, and Aaron's Company.
Maybe it's because I'm partial to the radio and that's just how I grew up, but this is exciting for me. That's Lane Grindle, Brewers radio play-by-play man. What's up, Lane? Thanks for being here on Inside Wisconsin.
It's great to be with you. Big fan of the podcast. I watch it regularly.
Oh, thanks.
Wait, what you did because I'm on TV? I'm not a fan of the radio. Listen, dude, I'm older than you. I fell asleep with the transistor in my ear.
That's fair. I get it.
Yeah. Which, by the way, now I watch my kids or even my wife, and she's got her earbuds in when she falls asleep. And I'm like, why is that like now standard okay? And when we were kids, you had to literally hide the transistor under your radio, like your parents couldn't see that you were going to bed. That like somehow that was going to send you down the road to ruin. But now it's okay.
Yeah, a lot of things are acceptable now.
I want to start with this. So tell me though, because let's talk that medium. Why? And I sit at a desk and I get every game on every channel every night. Why is baseball still so good and still at its best on the radio?
It's a good question. And like I can only speak from myself and from my own standpoint, like I enjoy calling baseball on the radio more than anywhere else. Obviously, I think there's an intimacy to it. I think there's the ability with so many games, with 162 games from a Major League Baseball standpoint, plus spring training, that, people can't always schedule their entire day around a baseball game necessarily like you might on a Saturday. So to be able to bring the baseball game with you wherever you go is an important thing. But I also just think the history of it, for so many years, it was the only way that people could follow their favorite team. And I think that the ability to paint the picture in baseball lends itself maybe more than in other sports because there is more downtime. There is more chatter. There is more environment that you're able to just kind of step back and let the stadium speak for a while. And I think all those things combined just really make baseball such a great fit on the radio. But I would agree with you. I think baseball on the radio is the best. I have a love for it. And I think, for the rest of my career, as long as they'll let me do it, I'm going to be calling baseball on the radio because it's what I enjoy more than any other sport and more than any other medium.
You're going to stay here, right? You're going to do that here because a lot of people, this has been a hard position for people to stick with, Lane. We want you to stay here. Well, that's kind of it, right? Like the only people that are calling all 162 Brewers games are, or at least the ones that you're allowed to do, right? In terms of rights and stuff is you and Jeff Levering. You're painting that picture.
Yeah, that's pretty much right. And just to give you an idea of, me being in Milwaukee, we got a dog a year ago and we named it Crew. So I think our plans are to stay here for as long as they'll have us because we love it here. I've got 4 kids and they love the community and we love it here. And I'm a Midwest guy, so really no desire to ever be anywhere other than where I'm at currently. But that's the other thing. You're with the team every day. You're with the team on the road. You're with the team at home. You're in the clubhouse. You get to know the personalities. That's one of the real benefits of doing what we do and kind of being embedded, if you will. You're on the plane with them. You're on the bus with them. And so you kind of understand the daily grind these guys go through. It's not as easy as it looks sometimes. It's challenging. You're away from family. You become your own family, your own baseball family. And there's just a lot of enjoyment with that. Everybody's kind of there for each other. There's a lot of camaraderie. And I think that's one of the things about doing all 162 that just makes it fun because there's ups and downs. As we know, there's a lot of downs over a 162. Even the best teams have tough stretches and losing streaks. And even the worst teams have winning streaks at some point over the course of the season. And so kind of riding those waves and doing it together is what I think makes it so much fun.
That's what I thought until I saw the Dodgers, who they never lose. A losing streak for them is what, 3, maybe, if they've done that. That's just ridiculous. What they've done this year. And then I watched Dave Roberts the other day. He's like, well, we're just trying to get some people healthy and get our people back. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, you're fine. And you think they've lost Buehler and some of these other guys. It's crazy when it comes through. You spend that much time with guys that, like you said, you can't help but have a relationship. You can't help but, if a guy's going bad, feeling bad about him. But how do we always make sure then when we go, listen, that guy swung at a bad pitch, it's okay to say he swung at a bad pitch. Or if a guy's hitting 210 in his last 2 weeks, go, this dude is scuffling. I always found that if I know people, it actually makes it easier because they know you and they realize that you're just telling folks how it is. But just, if you would, just sort of how you negotiate your way through those kind of situations.
Yeah, that's a good point, John. That I think the relationships matter in those moments, because if you have the trust and that player or coach or manager or whoever it may be, they know where you're at. Like, they know your intentions are to cover the team. They know that, look, I mean, I'm a Brewers broadcaster. I'm not going to try to act like I'm impartial here. I want the Brewers to win. and they know that too. So I think that does count for something. And I think if you're upfront with guys in your conversations too, they respect that. And so there are guys that have down seasons. There are guys that have tough stretches over the course of the year. And they're not naive to that. It's not like they're in denial that this isn't going the way that I wanted it to. Most of those guys are pretty upfront about it in those periods of time as well. I find sometimes maybe the bigger challenge is when a guy's on a hot streak, or maybe a guy hasn't given up a run in 9 consecutive innings. And the minute you mention that on the air, then everybody's saying you jinxed it. That's sometimes the bigger issue, to be honest with you, is that, when things are going well, nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody just wants to leave that alone and pretend like it's not happening, because nobody wants to kind of fall out of the tree, so to speak, when you're in that tree and you're hugging on to the branches because you're playing so well. You want to stay in there as long as you can.
By the way, I don't buy the broadcast jinx. I love that people blame that. We are the biggest scapegoat. But yeah, like somehow you're sitting how many hundreds of feet away, or people miles away. Just like, you know what? Where I sit during a playoff game has no basis whatsoever if Christian Yelich is going to get a hit. It's not on me. And if I move to the seat next to me next time, because it doesn't. But there are people, swear up and down that they're totally in charge.
The biggest one is with no-hitters. Whenever there's a no-hitter going on, and the Brewers have had a great pitching staff over the last couple of years where there's been a lot of opportunities, in the 5th inning, into the 6th inning, a guy's carrying a no-hitter. And when that's going on, you're constantly getting things from Twitter. And there's people on both sides of it. I will say it. I don't worry about saying it early because it's not relevant.
Right.
But if it's in the 6th inning and a guy hasn't given up a hit, I don't shy away from saying no hitter. And sometimes if they give up a hit in the 7th inning, then somebody will tweet at me because they're upset. Sometimes if I don't mention it in the 6th inning yet, and I haven't mentioned it until the 7th, and people are like, oh, come on, man, just go ahead and say it. I hear it from both sides in those situations. And like I said, we've had a lot of those where it's been kind of close calls going into the 6th or 7th. So I don't buy it. It has nothing to do with it. It really doesn't. And so I'll say it if it's relevant at the time, and then I'll just let people be mad at me if that's the conclusion.
Right.
But we said it when Corbin and Josh had their no-hitter in Cleveland. Jeff and I were on the call together, and we talked about it on the air. We didn't shy away from it. And guess what? They still threw a no-hitter. So I think it was okay.
You got lucky because I'm all in on not talking about it. As a matter of fact, I tell my oldest son, Rhodey, if he or I notice one's going on, I'll be like, hey, the guy throwing the ball for the thing with the ball is doing a thing. And we're on the same, it's super fun. We're on the same page. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, man.
But you're not saying it, so it doesn't count, even though you're acknowledging it.
That's what I'm telling myself here.
Making sure.
He agrees. Appreciate that. All right. Did you have to become a Brewers fan? You mentioned that you grew up in the Midwest, right? Born in Iowa, went to South Dakota, then Nebraska, and now you're here in Wisconsin. So who is your team? And if it was the Cubs, we'll move on to the next question.
No, I was not the Cubs. I can tell you that. I was a Royals fan, which was painful for a lot of years, being a Royals fan. But my grandpa was a big Royals fan, and I had no choice. I wasn't real aware of what was going on in '85. I was 4 years old, but I went through some tough years as a Royals fan in the '90s, and then they kind of figured things out right before I came to Milwaukee. I got hired by the Brewers in February of '16, so the Royals had gone to back-to-back World Series. In '14, I went to their wild card win over the A's. I went to one of their ALCS games and 2 of their World Series games that year. And then I went to World Series Game 2 in 2015, and they, of course, win it in 15. And then I get the Brewers job a couple of months later. It was like the ultimate mic drop to being a fan of the Kansas City Royals. So, I mean, you went out on top in terms of that. But, but I always had followed the Brewers just being a baseball fan, and always had an appreciation for the fan base. That was the thing that always stood out to me as a baseball fan, was the passion of the Milwaukee Brewers fan base. The size of market they have compared to Kansas City. I mean, if Kansas City got to 2 million fans, they were having a parade, even in a decent year. And when I, looked at the Brewers, and they were routinely drawing 2.3, 2.4 million fans, that just blew me away. Even in down years, they were having these great numbers attendance wise. And so that always stood out to me. The tailgating always stood out to me. My grandpa, as I said earlier, big Royals fan, but he was just a big baseball fan in general. And he would do those bus trips with my grandma, and they would go, they'd be gone for like 2 weeks in the summer, and they go to a different ballpark every night. And he would take all these pictures and send me postcards. And then he would put like a photo book together at the end, and we would look at it when he would get back from them. And so County Stadium was almost always on that tour because of, they could hit that in the Midwest and then hit a couple of stadiums in Chicago on their way out to the East Coast. And now there's very few of those stadiums that are still in operation. I mean, Wrigley's one, Fenway's one, and I think the Rogers Center in Toronto, I know he had been there a couple of times. So it's fun when I go to those ballparks. I always think of my grandpa, to be honest with you, because he spent so much of his summers in his retirement going around to all those historical ballparks and checking out baseball. But that was really a lot of my familiarity with the Brewers, was through him and his passion, and just following the Brewers in that way. But it wasn't hard to become a big fan once I got here. And I wasn't sure how long it would take me to latch on, but the people in the organization make it really easy. I'm sure you guys have heard that from other people that you've had on in the past that have worked for the Brewers, but it's such a class organization. They treat their people so well. I got treated great when I was at Nebraska. I had no complaints. I thought I would spend the rest of my career there, to be honest with you. And the only thing I was really interested in doing was maybe getting into a Major League Baseball job. And it had to be a Midwest market if I was going to do it. Yeah. And like I said, I was very, very happy there. Thought I was going to spend the rest of my life there. But I had this opportunity. And I can tell you, I never knew that you could be treated the way that the Brewers treat their people. So it's been great in that regard. That makes you latch onto it fast. It makes you love it fast. It makes you cheer for the team fast. And we also have been lucky to have great clubhouse culture and good guys in that clubhouse. And the personalities make it easy to root for them individually too. And collectively, you're kind of in pretty quick.
Lane, I was always curious to that when people come into Wisconsin from out of state, like, we're pretty partial to being cheeseheads, and it really is that good when you come here. So thanks for making us feel good about that. It sounds like you've had the red carpet rolled out, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, the people are great. The passion, not just for the Brewers, obviously for the Packers, for the Badgers. I mean, it reminds me of what I experienced coming here from Nebraska, to be honest with you, with all the different fan bases and their love for their sports. And then, like I said, within the organization, I think the Brewers treat their people kind of like Wisconsin people just treat people in general. This is a fairly nice place where everybody gets along and just wants to have a beer and a brat and enjoy some camaraderie.
Did you have to pay have you had to pay in the old swear jar by not calling it AmFam Field? You been good?
I think I've only done it one time, which was shocking to me. And it was early on in spring training last year. That I really thought that was going to be a struggle for me and for all of us, for that matter. But I think I've only done it once, and collectively, I don't even think we're at like 3 or 4 as a group. We have a new broadcaster this year with us, Josh Maurer. So he's not. I mean, it was easy for him to slide in and start calling it American Family Field. But I don't know that I've caught Euchre calling it anything other than American Family Field. And I don't think Levering's does. So I might be the only guy that even did it. And I think I did it once in spring training, like early on in 2021. So I think the fact that the spring training complex is American Family Fields of Phoenix and was that for a year or two before we made the transition in Milwaukee was helpful because we got used to saying it.
You mentioned you take over and you're not traveling. And so you're watching baseball and you're trying to call baseball, which seems great because the pictures are unbelievable. We got HD.
Right.
It's amazing how much you miss when this is all you get. How crazy was that adjustment when, right? You see this great picture of the tag at second base. It's close, but you can't see the ump, right? Like
Right.
how difficult did that change your job?
It was really hard. There was parts of it that were okay. Calling pitches off the center field camera was a little easier than doing it from the press box. So there was things like that were all right. But on the whole, it was really, really hard and really challenging. I always told people like 95% of the time you wouldn't be able to tell that we're calling it off monitor, but that other 5%, it's kind of brutal. And I have a lot of horror stories of different plays that happened over the course of us calling monitor baseball that like give me nightmares still to this day. One was it wasn't a home run. It was a foul ball off the bat of Keston Hiura in Cincinnati. It was like the final road trip of the year in 2020. And he turns on a pitch from Trevor Bauer, hits it a million miles down the left field line, but you can't tell if it's fair or foul on the monitor. And I don't have a picture of the umpire. So it's one of those, if it's fair, it's gone, and you're holding and waiting for something. And the next picture I get is Trevor Bauer stomping off the mound, punching his glove because he's upset. So I'm like, oh, it's a home run. So I'm like, and it's gone for Keston Hiura. And the next shot is Keston walking back to the batter's box to get his bat. It was a foul ball. And so I had to bring it back into the park, which is never what you want to do as a broadcaster. And Trevor Bauer was just mad that he missed his spot and made a bad pitch and almost got taken deep. And so, like, that was just brutal. I was so upset. It's like, we got to get back on the road soon. Like, that's your first reaction as a broadcaster. Instead of going, I got it wrong, you're like, well, this is why we got to be in person.
Well, I think I speak for the entire state of Wisconsin when I say it is good to have you guys back on the road as well. Never mind the gaff. If you were not alone in 2020 on that. All right.
No.
We will get back into it in segment 2. We're back after this. We're Inside Wisconsin with Brewers radio play-by-play guy Lane Grindle.
Inside Wisconsin is brought to you by Baycare Clinic, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, Rolltech, Festival Foods, Capital Credit Union, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, American Family Insurance, Miller Lite, and Aaron's Company.